Welcome to Global Risk Community Chat. Today, our guest is Carol Williams. I'm very happy to have you here again, once again, at our podcast. Carol, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Essie.
Some of our audience already knows you, but for those that may not know, can you briefly introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I am the CEO of Strategic Decision Solutions. Sorry, it is still early this morning for me. And we are a strategy and risk management consulting firm. I have been doing risk management for 20 years plus and have a team of very well experienced enterprise risk management professionals.
Sounds great. So this time, what are we discussing on?
We are going to be talking about the changes that have been made with relationships between audit and internal audit and enterprise risk management, and how they can better collaborate to add value to the organization.
Yeah, interesting topic. We don't really hear actually this aspect that much, I think, like usually the auditors are pretty more close in their own, and the risk managers are more also enclosed on their own. So I guess we don't really hear their interaction much often. So then what are some key things when it comes to this?
Well, I think the big thing is that the business is getting tired of getting asked for information from risk management and then getting asked for the same information or very similar information from internal audit and from other risk related functions within the organization. And so it is on our responsibility to be mindful of the business and take as little time but still add value and fulfill our roles within the organization. So I got to brainstorming and thinking about there has to be a better way to do this. And I've talked with other people and we've all agreed there has to be a better way. And so I came up with three alternatives that kind of run a spectrum of how internal audit and risk management and other risk related functions can really collaborate. And some of it depends on how comfortable the business is in having risk related information provided by the business to internal audit, or do you want it to be highly visible, that collaboration to be highly visible to the business? So a lot of it does play to corporate culture and the open arms of audits versus we're going to keep that arm's length distance between the two.
Mm. Actually, quite interesting topic as well. Like, I think a lot of it is not only in terms of their collaboration, like a company culture thing, but I think also it is more of, how to say, like taking the initiative also to, be the first one to maybe start the collaboration. Maybe the audit part is waiting from the risk managers and then the other way, but there's no communication. So, essentially, like they do not end up collaborating. So, what would be maybe some more tips you can give to, either side and the company in general to, like establish like a nice collaborative environment, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's really three different keys, and I've recently written an article out on it. So I'm not going to dig into too much detail. Happy to give you that article link if you want to provide that with the podcast. But it is really about those three different options. One is behind the scenes collaboration, where internal audit and the ERM talk and figure out what is the common information that both areas need, and let enterprise risk management or just risk management be the person asking the business for that information and then silently feeding it to internal audit behind the scenes, so that now internal audit doesn't have to go and ask the business about it, but they still get the information. So that's one way. The other way is really simultaneous information gathering, where it's think about a risk assessment, and you invite internal audit to be part in the room, not part of the conversation, but part of the in the room to be able to hear the conversation and gather their own information, but they're not allowed to ask any questions, right? So simultaneous information gathering. The one that I think where adds the most value, but it does really depend on the comfort level of the company, is having internal audit be an active participant in the risk assessment, right? So it really comes down to looking at how are you gauging the effectiveness of the controls that you're capturing and identifying as part of the risk assessment, and being able to use internal audit as the gauge of the effectiveness of those internal controls. So if there's been an audit, being able to show, well, the audit says it was satisfactory, therefore the business is going to get full credit for the effectiveness of those controls because they know that they're designed well and they're working as designed. So versus the business is assessing the effectiveness of their controls and there hasn't been any outside eyes, which tends to be more on the optimistic side of how effective they are, without really realizing there's probably some gaps that could be shored up. So having internal audit actively involved in that participation of the risk assessment is going to be a really value add, and show how audit is not just producing audit reports just for the sake of producing audit reports, but it is actually factoring into the business decisions.
Mm.
So
I have actually a following question on this. We will be sharing your article, the link to the article on our description for our audience that wants to check it out.
Great.
But my follow-up question to this would be, because you shared 3 different, key things regarding this. Obviously, it depends on the comfort level of the company, but would you recommend in general to all companies to eventually, like become more open and, like go towards the third key point where, the internal audit essentially actively participates? Or do you think that this is not maybe required for every company?
It's not definitely not required for every company. And there's going to be some organizations that have very strict rules around audit having to keep their distance from the business and keeping that arm's length. Completely understand that. But reality is that audit is supposed to shore up the business and help the business do better. And the only way that can happen is if there's good conversation. And while you can have the conversation between audit and the business on their audit reports, what better way than to also have the business have a conversation with audit about their risks, right? So it makes it a full circle as opposed to just half a circle. So to me, that is definitely where companies should be aiming towards. However, if they have to stop at that second option where there's at least simultaneous information gathering, that's better than nothing, in my mind. So especially for those that are more highly regulated or have stricter requirements.
Clear. Thank you for that. Do you have maybe any takeaway points, or regardless of whatever stage they are in terms of, their comfort level, that they can start implementing on a very quick way? Like, they go tomorrow to work and they go like, oh, I'm going to, do something about this.
Go have a conversation with your internal audit peers and ask them what's on your plans for the rest of the year. What areas are you guys concerned about? And have just a level set conversation to see, is risk and audit concerned about the same things? Are they not concerned about the same things? Because you don't want them to be having 2 different messages to the business, because that is one way that business starts not trusting either one of the areas. Because if I've got 2 different areas that are telling me 2 different things about risk priorities, which one's right, which one's wrong, right? So getting on the same page between those 2 areas is going to be very, very important to start building that level of trust. So.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that as well. Hopefully our audience will, pay attention to this and how important also communication is. Is there any maybe last thing you want to share?
I think that risk management needs to really, really start thinking about, it's not just about protecting the company, it's about adding the value. And sometimes adding the value to the business is being mindful of their time commitments and what is on their plate, and not just thinking about, these are all the things that I've got on my to-do list that I need to work with the business on. And so once that respect is starting to be shown and recognized, the business will start saying, okay, well, you're taking up less of my time, I'll be more generous of my time, right? So it's the back and forth respect of what we're trying to do here. So please start being mindful of the business and verbalizing that, and they'll start recognizing it.
Thank you for sharing that as well. And with that being said, unfortunately, we have run out of our time for today. So once again, I want to thank you so much for, joining in this conversation today. Also, of course, coming once again and also being a very active member in our community as well, because we of course come across your articles quite often in our group as well. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. All right,
Likewise, have
take
a
care.
lovely day.